Before you even enter the lands of shadow, outside the cocoon of the Empyrean, the Tarnished is greeted by the Needle Knight, Leda.
Ah, were you guided here by kindly Mikola? I am Leda. And like you, I was guided by faith along his honorable path. Touch the withered arm, and you too will be transported to the realm of shadow where Mikola the Kind now dwells. My compatriots are there already. Like us, they have heard kindly Mikola's call. If you can find them, they are certain to lend you aid.
To understand her as a character, we first need to understand just who the Needle Knights are. They are an order of knights who are devoted to Mikola of the Haligtree, the word needle most likely referring to the gold unalloyed needle that Mikola had fashioned to help subdue his sister Melania's scarlet rot. And it makes sense that we would find Leda having been guided to the land of shadow, for this is where Mikola the Kind himself now resides. The item description for Leda's armor reads, chest armor of the Needle Knight, Leda. Embroidered with a golden crossed tree motif, the chalk white cloak and surcoat symbolize the honor of the Needle Knights. Kindly Mikola fashioned us as his needles to quell all, to ward away all. Like all those guided by kindly Mikola, Leda is under the influence of his very powerful charm. This charm being the ability to make one fall into a state of complete love for him. As Sir Ansbach says when talking about Mikola,
pure and radiant, he wields love to shrive clean the hearts of men. There is nothing more terrifying.
However, as you approach the Shadow Keep, this charm is broken. Yet, Leda's loyalty to Mikola is unshaken, even after the charm ceases, which really does represent how devoted the Needle Knights were to Mikola and his cause, although it seems Leda may not have thought so. In a rather sinister turn of events, it is implied that Leda had killed her former Needle Knight comrades, most likely due to a lack of devotion, which she can also be seen doing in the DLC, which we will come back to. The item description for Leda's sword reads, light greatsword with gold inlaid, weapon of Leda, the Needle Knight, deals holy damage. Though polished to a mirror sheen, this blade still reeks with the stench of crusted blood that lingers from the cull of her knightly comrades. So, having slain her former compatriots, Leda would seek out new ones, others who were guided by kindly Mikola. And this leads us nicely on to our next compatriot, Dryleaf Dane. Dane is a member of the Dryleaf sect, an order of spiritual seekers who, after seeing the decline of the Erdtree through the fallen leaves, decided to seek out and serve a new god. What separates the Dryleaf sect from being like any other group or order is that they choose to fight using unarmed techniques known as the Dryleaf arts. The item description for the Dryleaf seal reads, those who saw the decline of the Erdtree and the fallen leaves long ago braced themselves for the weakening of the order and embraced a strict faith, and then they made to serve a new god. As mentioned prior, Dane is one of Leda's compatriots, despite having served under kindly Mikola for longer than she has. If you ask Leda about Dane, she will say to you,
Oh, that man is known as Dane. He's been in the service of Mikola the Kind longer than I. He might be solemn of cheer, but is a fierce warrior nevertheless. There's no cause for concern. Dane's reluctance to speak to you is no fault of your own. We've been acquainted for quite some time, but even I am yet to hear his voice. Perhaps one day.
In his past, Dane had undergone great training to reach the level of skill that the Tarnished finds him in the DLC. Dane's footwork describes a process by which he would train with the aid of a waterfall, letting the water beat his body and throwing himself into its basin. The Tarnished can challenge Dane to a duel when they first encounter him. As he doesn't speak, this is done through an emote called May the Best Win. When performed in front of him, it will trigger the fight. If you successfully beat him, you are awarded with the Dryleaf arts, the item description of which reads, a technique for hand-to-hand combat without the aid of a weapon. This martial art combines fist strikes and kicks, the teachings of a group of spiritual seekers known as the Dryleaf sect, revealed only to those of worthy valor and character. It isn't until Dane is defeated by the Tarnished in Enya Elim that he actually speaks for the first time. We will also come back to this fight later. Another of Leda's allies is the Hornsent, a bitter man thirsty for revenge against the Impaler of Shadow Keep, Messmer, and by extension his mother Marika, for it was on Marika's command that Messmer led the cleansing crusades against the Hornsent. But were the Hornsent themselves truly innocent? I wouldn't be so sure of that. You see, the Hornsent used to be the dominant race within the Lands of Shadow, and one of their practices involved whipping shamans with a teeth-ridden whip, sticking them together and shoving them into jars, the purpose of which, apparently, being to allow them to ascend into sainthood. The item description of the tooth whip reads, "Whip bestrewn with rotting, misshapen teeth. Filthy and seething with disease, the teeth are embedded in the whip, and dose the victim with deadly poison upon each strike. As the open wounds ripen, they grow inflamed and ooze pus. The flesh of shamans was said to meld harmoniously with others." Regardless of whether the sainthood was true, this wasn't exactly a willing process to be done by the shamans, as they can be seen begging not to be put into the jars. And so, is the Hornsent ally really justified in his hatred for Messmer? As Leda puts it,
That aside, man is by nature a creature of conquest. And in this regard, the Tower folk are no different. They were never saints. They just happened to be on the losing side of a war, but it's still a wretched shame.
and so the Hornsent decided that he would follow in the path of kindly Mikola, as he was trying to bring a new age, an age of compassion, one that would certainly overrule the age bestowed by the Golden Order. As I mentioned earlier, Leda is known to kill those who she doesn't believe are true to their word in their devotion of Mikola, and once this charm breaks, the Tarnished is given the option to tell Leda who they think isn't loyal to Mikola. If you choose to tell her the Hornsent, then she will aid you in murdering him within the Shadow Keep. The other option you can tell her is Thiollier, but I wouldn't recommend that you try and get him killed. As we will see later, Thiollier is a man you want to keep alive. He is an isolated young man who can be found quite far and distant from the rest of the Compatriots. Once he was able to meet Saint Trina, and in doing so became insanely fascinated with her, saying how he would give anything just to see her again. We know this as the item description of Thiollier's mask reads, a mask upon which is carved a tranquil sleeping face. The silver hair is arranged in the same style as Saint Trina's, increasing arcane. Just once, Thiollier was granted the sweet repose of velvety sleep. The remainder of his days would be spent attempting to recapture it. Thiollier is also an expert in the arts of poison, as he sells all kind of poison armaments. He claims that this is all he's good at, and sees himself as utterly weak and, well, quite useless.
I'm sorry. But, well, I'm not much good at anything is all. I'm as weak as a kitten and thick as two planks. I've always been this way, since the very day I was born. I'm afraid the only thing I'm proficient in is poison. Sorry.
If you do tell Leda that you think Thiollier isn't loyal instead of the Hornsent, she will eventually conclude that due to his loyalties to Saint Trina and the connection they have to Mikola, she decides he isn't a threat. Continuing his quest will take you to the Garden of Deep Purple, where you find Saint Trina. Imbibing her nectar 4 times, she will beg you to stop Mikola from ascending into godhood. However, out of believing that he's the chosen one to hear her words, Thiollier will invade you, and upon defeating him, he will ask you, what did Saint Trina tell you?
Tell me, please. Assuming you spoke the truth back then. What did Saint Trina tell you? You are a wretched, wretched soul. a nightmare could plague me. Such a thing could possibly be.
The next compatriot of Leda is Sir Ansbach. He was formerly the feared commander of the Pureblood Knights, an order who served Mohg, the Lord of Blood, the very same whom Miquella had taken advantage of and used as his vessel for the promised consort Radahn. So why would Ansbach be in service to Miquella? After all, he tricked and manipulated his master. Surely he would hold a grudge against Miquella. As with the rest of the compatriots, Ansbach is under Miquella's charm. This fact really does highlight the power that Miquella holds. Even someone with a very good reason to hate Miquella can still be bewitched into loving him with just a simple charm. And so alongside the rest of Leda's compatriots, Ansbach is found in the Lands of Shadow, following the crosses left by Miquella in search of him. In fact, the charm took effect on him when he challenged Miquella, after he learned of the charm that he had put onto Lord Mohg.
Once, in an attempt to free Lord Mohg from his enchantment, I challenged tender Miquella, only to have my own heart rather artfully stolen. I knew not how weak I was. I believed that with sufficient mastery, even an Empyrean would be within reach of my blade. I could not have been more mistaken. Miquella the Kind is a monster, pure and radiant. He wields love to shrive clean the hearts of men. There is nothing more terrifying.
Like Thiollier, Ansbach is another whom you should try and keep alive. Leda will actually tell you that Ansbach is her next suspect after she had slain the Hornsent. She will then try and kill him next. So to continue his quest, the Tarnished must aid him in the fight against Leda in the Specimen Storehouse, at which point she learns where the Tarnished's loyalties really lie. Sitting just to the right of Sir Ansbach when you first meet him is Mor. His backstory is a simple one. Mor used to be a pest follower of Melania and her Scarlet Rot. Instead now, he supports Miquella's followers by providing them with items that are available for you to purchase. As you are seen as a follower of Miquella, he is willing to sell them to you as well. If you ask Sir Ansbach about him, he will tell you this.
Oh, you must mean Samor. Samor is a kind and stalwart ally. He provisions our little outfit. Samor traffics with the Forager brood, his brethren, who collect supplies from all corners of the land. No doubt they find inspiration in his many virtues. These are not your foes, Tarnished. Should you spot any Forager brood, be sure to mind your manners.
Throughout the DLC, you may stumble across a lone but friendly pest creature. These pests are Mor's Forager broods. The item description for the Forager brood's cookbook states, a record of crafting recipes left by the non-human Forager brood, shared out of kindness toward Mor and his kin. So it seems that Mor has a great connection to these creatures, so much so that if you kill one of them, he will invade you, where you will then be forced to murder him. The better alternative is to use a warming stone next to one of the incapacitated broods, and you will then receive the cookbook as a reward. Once Miquella's charm breaks, Mor is put into a state of deep sadness and despair.
I don't know what to do. Our mother abandoned her brood. She did not love us. We are her children. What should we do? Must we be sad forever?
If you tell him to put it behind him, Mor will move on, and you can find him later at Enya Elam. But if you tell him to remain sad forever, he will die, and his body can be found outside the Church of the Crusade, cradling one of the foragers. Our final compatriot is the Redmane Freyja. She was once a distinguished knight who served under General Radahn. However, in the swamp of Aeonia, she became afflicted with scarlet rot and was left to die. All hope seemed lost, yet Freyja was approached by kindly Mikola, who placed his lips around her wound and drained out the poison. This resulted in Freyja being charmed. The item description for Freyja's helm reads, Golden Helm of the Redmane Freyja, member of General Radahn's most distinguished knights. A hideous scarlet wound was once hewn into the center of her face. Later, Mikola gently put his lips to it, and the unfading scar became the compass that Freyja would thereafter follow. And so she too would follow Mikola's crosses into the lands of shadow, as a compatriot of Leda. Even after the charm breaks, Freyja is still loyal to Mikola, as she recalls hearing of the vow that Mikola had made with Radahn, and within the Shadow Keep, she learns through a letter from Sir Ansbach that he intends to resurrect Radahn as his consort. She welcomes this, believing that it would suit Radahn better than an honorable death. So now, with all of our characters and their motivations for following Mikola understood, how does this whole ordeal come to an end? In typical From Software fashion, the endings for these NPCs are never happy. When the Tarnished reaches the top of Enia Elim, just before facing Radahn and Mikola, you are stopped in your tracks by Leda. She tells you that she now knows it was never Mikola who guided you, it was instead the Erd Tree, that you came to the Land of Shadow merely in your conquest to become the Elden Lord, and not out of devotion to Mikola. Leda tells you that if you want to face Mikola, she will run you through, and so, with her allies, a battle ensues. However, not all of the compatriots choose to stand at Leda's side. Instead, Thiollier and Sir Ansbach choose to stand at your side instead, and aid you in the battle against Leda, Dane, the Hornsent, and Freyja. But the question is, why? Thiollier is only as loyal to Mikola as he is his other half, Saint Trina, yet it is revealed that Saint Trina does not want Mikola to ascend into godhood, and so, acting on their behalf, Thiollier chooses to betray Leda and fight by your side for Saint Trina. So what about Ansbach? Once Mikola's charm broke, Ansbach remembered that he had challenged Mikola for putting a charm on his master, Lord Mohg, and upon learning what he intended to do with Mohg's corpse at the Gate of Divinity, he chooses to fight alongside you, seeking justice for his lord, Mohg. In fact, Ansbach doesn't even hold a grudge against you for killing Mohg in the first place.
Oh. Something you want to get off your chest? Well, you needn't worry. It was you, wasn't it? Who defeated Lord Mohg. Fear not. I bear no grudge against you. His Eminence was felled in an honorable duel. And such are the risks of seeking lordship. Righteous Tarnished, we will have our victory. I swear upon my blood.
Ansbach can even be summoned to fight Radahn, consort of Mikola, along with Thiollier, really showing how his camaraderie with the Tarnished is genuine, even referring to the both of you as we when talking about getting revenge for Mohg. And so, with Leda and her allies slain, the Tarnished is able to challenge Mikola, with Leda and her allies meeting a tragic end, a life-changing devotion, for some against their own will, which unfortunately and ultimately led to their own demise.